Good morning, my dear friends. January is really the time when we start thinking about our houseplants at home. And this thought is already starting to cross our minds. Maybe we should start watering them more, maybe give them more fertilizer, maybe it's already time to repot them. And these thoughts very often lead us to start the houseplant season too early, and as a result we end up without a green jungle at home. Today I'll tell you about the 5 most common mistakes we make with houseplants, and of course I'll tell you how to save your houseplant season and how to prevent these mistakes. But before I do that, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel. If you haven't done it yet, I would really appreciate it. If you click subscribe, turn on the bell, and let me know if you are already starting the houseplant season in your homes. Fertilizer false start is mistake number 1. Very often at the beginning of the season, meaning in January or February. We want the plants to start growing quickly already, so we give them a large dose of fertilizers. And that's a mistake because the excess fertilizer can burn, for example, the roots, and the plant will start to grow poorly. That's why it's so important to wait and observe whether the plant is already waking up from its winter dormancy. Many plants actually have a period of light dormancy during the winter. We wait for that first leaf, the first little bud to appear somewhere, and only then do we start fertilizing. But my tip, straight from the heart, is to start not with very strong fertilizers, but to use, for example, biohumus or a homemade fertilizer. So, for example, dried banana peels, which provide a lot of potassium and work great, especially for growing orchids, so dried banana peels. We can crush them more or less, put them in the pot, and simply water them. I recommend doing this at the start of the season, not over-fertilizing the plant with a large dose, and it will definitely reward you later with beautiful growth. Mistake number 2 is sun shock. Yes, you heard that right, sun shock for plants. Generally, in Poland, plants are used to dim light during the winter months, like November, December, and January. And suddenly there's a bigger dose of sunlight outside, and that's when we want to put the plant, for example, on the windowsill so it gets more of that sunlight. But that's actually a mistake, because such very strong sunlight through the windows will cause burns. On those less resistant leaves, white or yellow spots will appear, which won't go away. They'll stay. This is the effect of burning the leaf, meaning the window acts like a lens that can even cause the leaf to catch fire. I once told a story on this channel about a friend who put a plant on her windowsill by the sea in Gdansk. In March, when the sun was really strong, she suddenly noticed smoke behind the curtain. It turned out that the plant got so hot that it actually got a little burned and smoke came from the leaf. So be careful with plants. When they get a sudden burst of sunlight, they often react badly. What's the solution? Of course, hardening. First, let's move those plants a little away from the window or take them off the windowsill during the time when the sun is strongest, especially for the first 2 to 3 weeks. I know it's work, but if you want to have beautiful plants, you have to take care of them. The third mistake is repotting into giant pots. I thought that spring is coming soon, so it's time to repot the plants. I found a Zamioculcas that already needs to be repotted because it's basically outgrown its pot and the leaves are already bending. I need to give it more soil here, so I'm taking a pot like this, and when I give it more soil, it will grow better. A mistake, an absolute mistake. Don't do this. Remember that if there's a big difference between the pot the plant was growing in and the pot you're transplanting it into, and those roots will take a long time to grow, they'll keep developing, they won't absorb water from the part of the soil mix that hasn't been overgrown, so the water will accumulate there, the water will stay there, and the roots that reach that area will rot. Always repot into a pot that's 1, 2, or at most 3 sizes bigger, which in practice means 1, 2, or 3 centimeters larger. And I absolutely can't repot a Zamioculcas like this into a huge pot, especially a Zamioculcas, because it likes to be tight in the pot, so I'll repot it into a pot that's just 1 centimeter bigger, maybe 2, and then it will definitely be happier. Mistake number 4 is ignoring hitchhikers, in other words, not checking if there are any survivors, any pests that have settled, for example, under the leaves of our plants. Remember that at the start of the season, when you haven't repotted those plants yet, when they still don't have enough sunlight, they're there. Well, let's say they're a bit weakened by the dry air from the radiators, and that's the perfect place for spider mites and thrips to appear among those beautiful green, crispy leaves. And in just 2 weeks, for example, they can cause huge damage to our plant. That's why it's so important to check at least once a week to see if any bugs, tiny insects, or little webs have appeared on the plant. Basically, any stowaways. And what can we do to prevent this? Of course, we check regularly, and if they do appear, we can use all kinds of sprays, but prevention is also very important. Prevention in this case can mean, for example, giving our plants a bath or a shower, washing off the layer of dust, and rinsing away any insects that appear. For example, here I have this rather neglected Sansevieria, which has been collecting dust to show you what a dusty plant can look like and what effects it can have. The plant breathes less efficiently because of the dust that has settled here, which makes it more vulnerable to being attacked by all kinds of different insects. What can we do? And on top of that, how can we nourish the plant using our own homemade method? You will need boiled water and a lemon. Squeeze the lemon in an appropriate amount, just enough to color the water, but not so much that it becomes very acidic. Rather, let's say, not too much. We take a cloth or a paper towel, and of course we can rinse it off our plant beforehand, but remember, Sansevieria likes less water, so it's good not to overwater it. But we can wet such a cloth or a paper towel like this. And we wipe these leaves, we wipe them, clean off the dust, clean off the dirt, and this way we allow the plant to breathe through its leaves. We also get rid of any insects that might be here, because this slightly acidified water won't be to their liking. In short, and of course the lemon gives us a sense of freshness, it disinfects a bit, so if anything has appeared here, like some damage, the plant will be disinfected, and that will definitely help the plant. So look, here's a cleaned leaf and an uncleaned leaf. What do you think? Will insects settle faster on this leaf or on this one? Of course, the answer is obvious, so I encourage you to check your plant and give it this kind of plant SPA. Mistake number 5 is the wrong approach when it comes to taking care of houseplants. In early spring, it's just like cooking in the kitchen. We need to prepare the right mix so that we get the right results later. What is this mix? The mix, it's the blend in which we will plant or repot our plants. Of course, you can do this in basic soil that you buy somewhere at a supermarket, a flower shop, or a garden store. and then plant the plant, but remember to adjust the soil to the specific plant. That's why it's so important to get familiar with what a particular plant needs. Some need a mix that's more loose, others need one that's more compact. Definitely, especially in early spring, plants need a lot of air around their roots. That's why I'm going to prepare my own mix, and now I'll give you the recipe for this mix. I buy a soil mix that's generally already ready for repotting plants, meaning it already has coconut fiber, some chips and some perlite, but for me it's still too compact, so I add the right ingredients to it. I add expanded clay. Yes, expanded clay. I add it to the soil and pour it in. Okay, let's add more of this expanded clay. I pour in perlite. Perlite loosens up the mix, creating air pockets where the roots can grow beautifully. Let's add more of that. What do I mix this with? Of course, the proportions are just by eye, so when you grab a handful of the mix, you feel the clumps, you feel that there's air in there, you feel that the plant, the roots, will be able to penetrate the soil very well. I'm actually preparing a mix for a plant like Monstera, the famous Monstera, which I'll talk about in the next episode, but it's not just for Monstera. Such a mix will also work great. For example, when repotting Sansevieria. Here we have a Sansevieria, a cylindrical one. Look at its roots, it's already time to repot it because there's very little soil left here. I'm looking for a suitable pot that's 1 or 2 sizes bigger, especially for plants like this that grow slowly, and then I put the plant into this mix. The mix looks fantastic, it has beautiful colors, lots of textures, and it will definitely make the plant grow excellently in it. My dear friends, the time for repotting and fertilizing potted plants is coming up soon. That's why you should avoid these 5 basic mistakes, do it right, and start with information about the specific plant. And I encourage you to write in the comments which plant gives you the most trouble. I'll try to help. See you in the next episode about Monstera.